आप सब लोग कैसे हैं?
बस हम चल रहे हैं। कभी घूम रहे कभी चल रहे। So Bhakti, we just wait for about 5 minutes because generally it takes a little time for people to just join.
नमस्ते आशीष भाई।
नमस्ते जी, कैसे हैं आप?
नमस्ते आशीष जी।
नमस्ते नमस्ते सभी को नमस्कार।
आशीष जी, आप मल्लिका जी और सुमेश जी को जानते हैं?
नहीं, आप दोनों से बस मुलाकात हो रही पहली बार।
नमस्ते।
नमस्ते जी। तो सुमेश जी कहाँ हैं?
मैं बैंगलोर।
अच्छा।
Right now I'm in Bangalore, yeah. But I'm Kerala से, but I am in Bangalore now.
और मल्लिका जी?
अरे इससे बात कर रही हूँ, आप देख सक रहे हैं कि मैं तो जैकेट में बैठी हूँ।
Malika ji, Mount Everest, she was the first lady to climb Mount Everest.
Actually, no, Meera, I know that stories kind of get all complicated, but I did a very interesting journey from Bomdila, starting in Arunachal Pradesh से शुरू करके बॉम्डिला से फरवरी में शुरू किया और काराकोरम पास तक गए हम लोग, जो कि जम्मू कश्मीर में, मतलब 6.5 महीने का एक एक्सपेडिशन था और ये 97 में था। तो वो sometimes because it was a big expedition, it's as good or as bad as climbing Mount Everest, but it was a long journey. Yes.
Fantastic.
Great.
That's a new information, Malika ji. I was not aware of that.
Okay, lots to discover about each other. बल्कि मैं एक सुझाव रखना चाह रही थी, क्योंकि हम 15 ही लोग हैं, तो अगर थोड़ा ब्रीफली सबको ही अपना थोड़ा सा परिचय दे दें तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा, क्योंकि बहुत ज्यादा होते तो फिर इट्स अनरीजनेबल। 2-2 मिनट का भी हम बता दें तो आशीष जी आपका भी मैं सुनूंगी, मैं जानना चाहती हूँ गुप्ता जी। तो वो जब वो क्रम चलेगा तो उसमें शायद सबका परिचय हो जाएगा।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
आशीष जी आप ही शुरू करिए।
ठीक है। मेरा नाम आशीष गुप्ता है और मैं जबलपुर मध्य प्रदेश का रहने वाला हूँ और काफी समय यहाँ वहाँ 2-3-4 जगह अलग अलग फॉर्मेट्स में जॉब, नौकरियाँ, खुद का कुछ अपना करने का जो सोशल एंटरप्राइजेस थे वो सब करके, एनजीओज करके, फिर मैं अभी पिछले 4-5 साल से 6 साल से जबलपुर के पास एक गांव है इंद्राना करके, तो आई हैव सेटल्ड देयर विद माय फैमिली हियर एंड इन माय होल जर्नी आई हैव हैड द अपॉर्चुनिटी टू वर्क विद एंड बी विथ श्री रविंद्र शर्मा जी, लोग उनको गुरु जी के नाम से जानते हैं, आदिलाबाद के रहने वाले हैं वो, और उनका आर्ट, कल्चर, क्राफ्ट और इसके साथ साथ पूरी समाज व्यवस्था उनके माध्यम से, आर्ट, कल्चर, क्राफ्ट, इन सब के माध्यम से समाज व्यवस्था कैसे चलती थी, उनका एक बहुत लंबा अनुभव था, बहुत लंबा अध्ययन था। तो आई हैड द अपॉर्चुनिटी टू बी विथ हिम फॉर लॉट ऑफ टाइम। अभी 3-4 साल पहले वो हमारे बीच में नहीं रहे हैं, तो उनका एक कला आश्रम था आदिलाबाद में, और उसी की प्रेरणा लेके फ्रॉम द इंस्पिरेशंस फ्रॉम हिम वी एस्टैब्लिश्ड हियर अ जीविका आश्रम. जीविका is basically, when we are referring to जीविका, it is जीविका of artisans, because हमारे यहाँ जो जितना है कारीगरी के खेती के अलावा जो काम रहा है पहले ट्रेडिशनल, उसमें ये सारी जीविका, सारे लाइवलीहुड्स कारीगरी के हिसाब से ही थे, आर्टिसनरी ही थे। तो उस सेंस में ये जीविका आश्रम है। पिछले 4-5 सालों से हम लोग यहाँ गांव में रह रहे हैं और कुछ छोटा छोटा अपने व्यक्तिगत स्तर पे प्रयोग चल रहे हैं। सॉरी फॉर स्लाइटली लॉन्ग इंट्रोडक्शन। Who next?
Meena, why don't you go?
I'm Meena Apninda. I'm based in Hyderabad. For about 20 years now, I've been associated with the Crafts Council in various capacities. We've done a lot of programs which were funded earlier by DCH with various craft groups in Andhra Pradesh, the undivided Andhra Pradesh. So, like I think things have changed over the years, and I think now we have to focus on livelihoods, sustainability. So that's my interest now. I mean, and after being part of CD, I realized that we need to collaborate to create this kind of livelihood opportunities. And I agree with Ashish Gupta ji. I've met Ravindra ji just once, and I didn't realize what a magnificent opportunity it was. I should have made more use of it. But yes, a lot of things that he says, it might sound very old-fashioned, but it actually makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That's about it.
Okay, everyone, just go fast, huh? Because more people are joining, and let's take this opportunity to get to know each other. Bindu?
Hi, I'm Bindu. I'm part of Breakaway Travel Company, and we do a lot of textile tours, and I think we are connected with artisans because of our founder, Shilpa Sharma. I think many of you know her. So yeah, so that is how our office is in Delhi. I am based in Calcutta, but we work together like that, me and Shilpa. Next.
Hello everyone. Yeah, this is Harish. I'm with Kamir, organization working with artisans in Kutch region of Gujarat. Meera is there, our director, and I'm here because I'm very much interested in this cultural tourism जो ये है, क्योंकि हम आर्टिसंस के साथ और यहाँ की कम्युनिटी के साथ करते हैं. So yes, I'm here.
Sonia ji, would you like to? So basically, Malika, Sumesh, Ashish, of course, is part of the collective group. Just to give you a heads up, most people who have joined here, they're all members of the CD network in different capacities. You know, so someone is just supporting, for example, you know, Sonia, are you introducing?
I was muted. I'm so sorry. It's 6:30 in the morning, my time.
Oh God, okay, that's commitment.
You can introduce me. I'm just a supporter. I'm a big fan of creative dignity, and I live in Delhi normally.
Yeah,
right now I've just woken up.
Yeah, she's in London, and that shows like she's super committed to CD. She basically has worked with the artisan sector for many years. She was part of the Sakari Heart Samiti. She's supporting a whole lot of artisans and groups. So she underplays herself, but yeah, she's a huge supporter. Then of course we have Dipali, Shelja. So I mean, Vanmala, who's she's a very well-known ceramic artist and potter. So yeah, it's like, like really diverse members of the collective, all people doing wonderful work in their own right. And I think we have like now more people joining, Malika. So would you still want the introductions to go on, or shall we start with the meeting?
I think we should just start. I mean, समय था उस समय हम कम लोग थे, तो इसलिए मैंने सुझाव दिया. शुरू कर लेते हैं. और मुझे लगता है कि बातचीत में जब सवाल जवाब होगा, maybe people would like to just introduce themselves and ask or have the discussion.
बिल्कुल. So what we will do is I will just request Bhakti to just introduce the panel that's here, and then Sumesh will take over and moderate the session. He will also share his own experience. Okay. Yeah, Bhakti, go ahead.
Hi everyone. So a little bit context about this session also. As the CD collective, we keep meeting once a month, and from now on, we are actually trying to discuss topics that interest different members, discuss topics that people have expertise on, and we can just listen to them and learn new things. So this is one of those sessions, and we are very happy to have Malika, Virdi, we have Sumesh, and we have Ashish ji. And I'll introduce our panel, and then Sumesh, who's also really kindly offered to help moderate the session, will take over. So Sumesh hails from Kerala. he's followed the career of a software professional who's turned into a campaigner, a researcher, and somebody who's pioneering sustainable tourism through Kabani, which translates to the other direction. And Sumesh, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kabani started as a campaign company raising awareness about sustainable and thoughtful tourism. And it is now also, another wing of it is also a proper travel company that offers such experiences to people. And yeah, so welcome Sumesh. Thank you for being here. Malika, as we got to know right now, has climbed the Mount Everest. So, has followed an interesting journey to the Mount Everest.
It's okay.
Okay.
You weren't listening, Bhakti, when she explained that whole story.
It's okay. But thanks, Bhakti, for at least putting in that word. Yeah, I'm an avid mountaineer and I like traveling in the mountains. Please carry on.
And Malika has hence settled in the mountains. She's been an active member of the mountain community, and she's also served as a sarpanch at the Sarmoli Chaniti Van Panchayat. She has started Himalayan Arc, with which the community is a tourism initiative and supports homestays run by local mountain women. And we'll know more about Himalayan Arc when she shares her journey. Ashish ji, as he himself, has introduced us to, is somebody who's lived by the philosophy of Ravindraji, and he started Jeevika Ashram in Madhya Pradesh, where he's pioneering a lot of alternative rural lifestyle experiences, and with special focus for local arts and local workmanship and local lifestyle that people can experience. So yeah, the floor is yours, Sumesh.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, first of all, congratulations. Collective Dignity to organize such a small discussion. And I'm sure this is very timely, and definitely we have a very good people sitting here with a lot of diverse experience and expertise. So I'm sure we will have a beautiful creative discussion in coming one and a half hours. I think for those who are all working in, of course, craft sector also, especially in tourism sector, it is very important last couple of years. And now after all this pandemic, sector is also kind of reopened. And we are also facing a new challenge now. Especially those who are working in the rural areas. Malika ji might have to say a lot of things. A lot of people are coming now. The visitation is very high, a kind of a new challenge which is also emerging. And people are also explaining this as revenge tourism, and also another set of challenges also in front of us. I'm not getting into that. But of course, in a post-pandemic, I don't know whether we can say that it's post-pandemic. Numbers are again, you're coming up here in Bangalore and all, but still, the kind of a tourism which we are all trying to facilitate or promote, which is getting a momentum, and I could see that a lot of market trends and all kind of substantiating, our programs and all. So there is a relevance. A new relevance, I would say. The kind of a project we are or experience we are going to share with you. And of course, during pandemic also, myself, Malika ji and all, we were discussing about how resilient, a community-based tourism program compared to other tourism programs, which is more investment intensive and so on. And now again, after pandemic or, when reopened up, we are also how resilient in terms of changing these challenges is also going to be a question for us, and I'm sure their experience sharing will have a lot of things to share. And of course, today's topic, craft and culture, which is also very interesting. And I would say, I mean, of course, my background is also kind of an activist, and now I'm also into tourism business and all. But I would definitely, doubt that the so-called craft and culture, sector, how tourism is, like, I mean, what is the benefit, the real benefit, getting this sector. So I think we will discuss all this. I'm not getting, into too much details and taking time. So I would like to invite Ashish ji, because he's organizing a lot of, programs, and he's very experienced in this sector, to share his experience. And after that, Malika ji, and definitely we can have a fruitful discussion also. Thank you. Ashish ji, floor is yours.
Yeah. Do you want us to play the video, or would you like to speak a little?
Yeah, I think let's play the video first, and then discuss on that. So the 2-minute video, so we can have that.
अमराई ग्राम स्टे जबलपुर शहर से लगभग 30 किलोमीटर की दूरी पर विंध्य पर्वत श्रृंखला की सुरम्य वादियों में इंद्राना ग्राम के जीविका आश्रम परिसर में स्थित है। जीविका आश्रम जबलपुर शहर के एक दंपत्ति की प्रयोगात्मक पहल है, जो कि मध्य प्रदेश की ग्रामीण जीवन शैली में भारतीय व्यवस्थाओं के बचे हुए बीजों के संकलन एवं संरक्षण के लिए प्रयासरत है। अमराई ग्राम स्टे प्रकृति के सानिध्य में रहने और विभिन्न ग्रामीण गतिविधियों में शामिल होने के लिए एक अप्रतिम स्थान है। आप यहाँ कारीगरों के साथ बैठकर बांस, लोहा, मिट्टी आदि की कारीगरी और इनके साथ साथ देशज गौशाला संबंधी गतिविधियों को देख व सीख सकते हैं। आसपास के गांवों से एकत्रित ग्रामीण कलाकृतियों से सजा एक स्थानीय संग्रहालय हमें अपने स्वर्णिम अतीत से परिचित कराता है। आप यहाँ पर्यावरण के अनुकूल वास्तुकला जैसे बांस के घर, मिट्टी का फर्श, मिट्टी का प्लास्टर, कबेलू या खपरों की छतों आदि को नज़दीकी से देख व समझ सकते हैं। कई तरह की आउटडोर कैंपिंग आपको प्रकृति से करीब से रूबरू होने का मौका देती है। इसके अलावा विभिन्न तरह की ट्रेल्स के माध्यम से आप प्रकृति एवं स्वयंपूर्ण ग्रामीण जीवन शैली से अवगत होते हैं। और कुछ नहीं तो आप मचान, भोंगा, पेड़ के नीचे आरामदायक चारपाई, झूले या बांस की कुर्सी आदि पर इत्मीनान से आराम कर सकते हैं। इस पूरे अनुभव को आत्मसात करने के लिए परिसर स्थित होम स्टे में रुका भी जा सकता है। आप यहाँ पारंपरिक अंदाज में बने और परोसे लजीज व्यंजनों का भी आनंद उठा सकते हैं। यह ग्राम स्टे एवं होम स्टे मध्य प्रदेश टूरिज्म बोर्ड से मान्यता प्राप्त एवं पंजीकृत है। अमराई ग्राम स्टे की विभिन्न गतिविधियों, पैकेजेस, बुकिंग आदि की जानकारी के लिए आप दिए गए नंबरों पर संपर्क कर सकते हैं। होम स्टे की बुकिंग एयरबीएनबी के माध्यम से भी की जा सकती है।
Thank you, Bhakti. So I hope everybody has been able to get it. Sumesh, was it okay for you to have this in Hindi? Understand the Hindi also?
I can.
Yeah, at least photographs were telling itself a lot of things, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. See, ये हमारा मतलब ट्रेवल के बारे में देखने से पहले, जानने से पहले इसकी पूरी थोड़ी सी एक हिस्ट्री देखना, इसकी पूरी यात्रा देखना जरूरी है कि how it has come up. See, what happened, this Amrai Gram Stay, while we have made this video recently, and it is in-house, made by me myself. No professional has been employed for this particular thing. This we started for ourselves. It was not for somebody else. That is first and the foremost thing. तो हम अपना घर अपने हिसाब से रहने के लिए अपनी चीजें, जितनी कारीगरी की चीजें भी हैं, बाकी सारी चीजें भी हैं, जो वहाँ इंटरेक्शन के लिए भी लोग आते हैं। दिस इज अ स्मॉल ग्रुप, जैसे सीडी एक ग्रुप है, उसी तरह से जो गुरु से जुड़े जो लोग हैं, या अलग अलग चीजों पे जो हम लोग यहाँ पे छोटी छोटी, जो मेरा खुद का नेटवर्क है और एक्सटेंडेड नेटवर्क है। मतलब खुद का नेटवर्क से मतलब है अब सीडी इज नाउ माय नेटवर्क आल्सो। सो दिस काइंड ऑफ नेटवर्क व्हिच आर देयर, तो उनके जो लाइक माइंडेड लोग हैं, अलग अलग विषयों पे बात करने के लिए या इकट्ठा करने के लिए एक मुझे लगा कि इस तरह का एक वेन्यू होना चाहिए। तो वो ये एक पूरी तरह से फैमिलियल इनिशिएटिव के रूप में स्टार्ट हुआ, बट होते होते उसकी चीजें थोड़ा इस तरह से हुई कि थोड़ा ब्रॉडर शेप लेने लगा। इसका नाम भी आश्रम इसलिए पड़ा हुआ है, जीविका इज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन व्हिच वी यूज्ड टू हैव, दैट इज स्टिल देयर बट इट्स डिफंक्ट, so that used to be called Jeevika Livelihood Support Organization. So that Jeevika tag was there. But when the architect, when this place was getting constructed, architecture of this whole thing was so such that all the nearby people used to come here and they used to say आश्रम बन रहा है, आश्रम बन रहा है. तो ये एक जो फीलिंग उसके अंदर खुद ही आने लगी, मतलब ये हमने बताया नहीं था कि हमको आश्रम नाम रखना है, तो ये उस तरह से ये हुआ. तो उसको हमने फिर जीविका लगा के उसको जीविका आश्रम बोलना चालू किया और अब लोग उसको जीविका आश्रम बोलते हैं. जो अलग अलग लोग आते थे उन्हीं लोगों में से एक बार एमपी टूरिज्म बोर्ड के लोग आए यहाँ पर, और जब उनको लगा ये एमपी टूरिज्म बोर्ड ये देखें तो ये रूरल टूरिज्म के ऊपर में काफी कुछ काम कर रहा है, काफी बहुत सारे इसको अवार्ड्स वगैरह भी मिल रहे हैं, रिकॉग्निशंस मिल रहे हैं नेशनल इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे. तो काफी सारे लोगों और यहाँ की रूरल कम्युनिटी अभी भी मतलब उस तरह से है कि जहाँ पे बहुत सारा कुछ जो है लोगों को देखने दिखाने लायक बचा हुआ है. Because of the so-called underdeveloped state, बहुत सारी चीजें जो अभी भी हमारे यहाँ बची रह गई हैं. हमारे सिस्टम्स कैसे रहे हैं, हमारे लोग कैसे रहे हैं, हमारे यहाँ कारीगरियां कैसी रही हैं, कलाकारियां कैसी रही हैं, रीति रिवाज कैसे रहे हैं, लोगों का रहन सहन कैसा रहा है, तो ये सारा कुछ अभी भी बहुत कुछ बचा रह गया है. तो ये जो एमपी टूरिज्म बोर्ड के जो लोग आए तो उनको लगा कि यार ये तो हमारा जो हम रूरल टूरिज्म प्रोजेक्ट कर रहे हैं, बहुत सारी साइट्स बना रहे हैं, होम स्टेज वगैरह में प्रमोट कर रहे हैं, उसमें ये तो एक रिसोर्स सेंटर के रूप में होना चाहिए. So that's how they started saying why don't you get it recognized or get it registered kind of thing. So affiliation उन्होंने एक अपना उनका एक recognition होता है, उस तरह से उन्होंने इसको recognize किया कि ये ग्राम स्टे के. They had 4 categories actually. For other for recognition they used to they have 4 categories under which they register such units. One is homestay, which is a normal kind of thing. Homestays at various places. It can be in urban location, rural location. Second is bed and breakfast facility. So that can also be there, but largely in the urban localities. Third category they had was farm stay. So that is one which is all known. But the fourth category which they had come up was this gram stay. Gram stay is is an facility or is the infrastructure where you can have the exposure of the entire village kind of thing. तो जहाँ आपको आर्टिसंस के बारे में, कलाकारों के बारे में, खेती के बारे में, वहाँ के आर्किटेक्चर के बारे में, रीति रिवाजों के बारे में, खान पान के बारे में एक कंप्रहेंसिव एक्सपोजर मिल सके, तो इस तरह की उनकी फैसिलिटीज है. फॉर्चुनेटली अनफॉर्चुनेटली अभी तक मेरे ख्याल से 3 या 4 ग्राम स्टे ही पूरे एमपी में उन्होंने रजिस्टर किए हुए हैं. अमराई वाज द वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट वन because they found the entire place was resonating with their ideas. बाकी सारे लोग ये जनरली था कोई एसएचजी इस तरह का कुछ काम करना चाहे या कोई गांव इस तरह का, ग्राम पंचायत को इस तरह का काम करना चाहे, उसके लिए था. ये this recognition will be given not to an individual but to a whole village or a SHG who is basically from that particular village. तो ये इसकी जर्नी थी और उन्हीं के कहने पे फिर ये थोड़ा इसको हमने यहाँ कुछ लोगों के रुकने के लिए वैसी व्यवस्था थी, उसको थोड़ा सा उसके हिसाब से किया कि लोग यहाँ पे आके सके, रह सके. बेसिक एम्यूनिटीज जो होती हैं आश्रम की, तो इट इज लाइक दैट ओनली. तो ज्यादा इसमें कुछ फैसिलिटीज नहीं है. ओनली थिंग इज कि यहाँ आपको जैसे आपने वीडियो में देखा पूरा कंप्रहेंसिव आपको एक्सपोजर मिलता है. जब आप यहाँ रहते हैं तो आर्टिसंस के साथ में बात कर सकते हैं, काम कर सकते हैं. यहाँ 4-5 आर्टिसनरी का काम होता है, बहुत छोटे लेवल पे होता है, 2-2, 3-3 आर्टिसंस ही है. ऐसा नहीं कि it's a huge production facility which is there. So you have bamboo artisans, you have iron artisans, you have pottery artisans, you have some people who make things from cow dung, so artifacts from the cow dung. So those kind of people are there. In addition to this, there are a lot of people who are there in the villages who have been identified, who have got relationship with us now because of our experiences and working together. तो उसमें काफी सारे लोग हैं जो अलग अलग तरह की चीजें हैं. और जैसे मैंने उसमें बहुत सारी ट्रेल्स बताई हुई थी कि आप यहाँ पे जो गांव के आर्किटेक्चर का एक सेपरेट ट्रेल हम लोग करते हैं रादर. दूसरा आर्टिसंस का एक ट्रेल है. तीसरा गांव में खेती से रिलेटेड चीजें हैं जो उसका एक ट्रेल है. पास में नदी है, नदी से रिलेटेड ट्रेल है. तो ये सारे एक्सपीरियंसेस होते हैं. और ये जो हमने जो किया हुआ था, इट वाज नॉट फॉर अ टूरिज्म पर से पर्पस पर से. It was basically for exposing people who have not been exposed to this kind of thing and generate an interest in them. और उसी लिए इसी अमराई ग्राम स्टे से रिलेटेड एक और प्रोग्राम हम लोग यहाँ चलाते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड स्पॉइल विद सॉइल. दिस इज फॉर स्कूल चिल्ड्रन. So all those school children who are there, who especially in the urban areas, who are not exposed to this kind of thing, so they come for a day and get exposed to at least these things in a fun way. तो आप मस्ती भी होती है, पिकनिक भी होती है, और उसके साथ साथ सारी चीजें आप देखते भी हैं. तो ये सारा चीज है. मेरे ख्याल से मैं ब्रीफली यहीं पर रोकता हूँ, एंड देन विल टेक अप द क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन. इज दैट ओके सुमेश? इजंट इट?
Yeah. You can take a little more time if you want to explain.
No, then that's okay. We'll have later on also. We can listen to Malika ji and then.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I think it is very interesting to listen you, Ashish ji. I mean, of course, you're talking about local architecture, local skills. It's really interesting. And also, one point that's really strike me, like, this is not for the tourism purpose. I mean, tourism is, I think, a value addition or something like that. And that approach is also very interesting to explore further. I'm sure people will have more questions and we'll come back to you. Malika ji, please.
You're on mute, Malika.
Thanks, Sumesh, and thank you, Ashish ji. आपने एक तरह से ग्रामीण इलाकों में the possibilities of tourism in rural India, you've spoken about that. Can I speak in English and Hindi both? Is everybody familiar with both the languages? Okay. So I speak to you as Bhakti introduced me from a very remote corner of the Himalaya in the state of Uttarakhand. We are in Pithoragarh district and very close to the Nepal-Tibet tri-junction. So we abut western Nepal and we are in the eastern part of Uttarakhand. But if you look at what is our strength as a community, one is, of course, the fact that we have the Van Panchayats, of which I am the Sarpanch. Van Panchayats are essentially village forest commons, and this is governed together with the entire community. So every community has a forest area that they govern. The second is the natural heritage of this area. We have snow peaks across the mountains. So of course, it lends itself very readily to tourism. Our own journey with tourism actually started in 2003 when I first got elected as a Sarpanch. And for us, the route into tourism was really looking at how can we both use and conserve our natural heritage. So people in this remote village are dependent on their forests. We're dependent on our forests for both of course, water supply, but beyond that, for our everyday needs like leaf litter, fodder, fuel wood. So it's a very active rishta with our landscape. It's a dependence, and therefore, how we manage it also determines the quality of our life. And as often happens in the times that we live in, private property, private profit, and wealth creation is something we understand very well. But what do you do with the commons? After all, the landscape from which we're earning, even from tourism, is really a common property resource. It belongs to the entire community, but some of us then end up earning from it in the form of tourism. So this is just to give you a brief history of where we started from and of course the issues that we faced. The other thing about this region that also lends itself to tourism is the fact that we were on the trade route with Tibet. So there were a lot of communities, in fact, the Bhotia community, which is a transhuman community, which means we had a fixed migration route, and along with that, pastoral. So unka kaam, woolwork, craft was an intrinsic part of everybody's livelihood. So, when we talk with a collective like Creative Dignity, clearly a lot of communities that all of you work with or we all work with are communities who have lived on a particular landscape, that have lived with livestock, that have also then evolved certain crafts and handicrafts from which of course they used in their everyday lives, but then also now are connecting with the outside market, and tourism is one zaria. My question to all of you and to myself, to all of us, is that in the whole tourism narrative, where are the people? Who represents these people? If you're talking about artisans, if you're talking about rural communities like the one I belong to, how and who represents them? If you look at policy documents, say in a state like Uttarakhand, and see what they have in mind for tourism. Ashish ji spoke about MP tourism. In fact, the MP tourism people came and visited our village as well when they were in the process of setting up the whole, program that they are now running quite successfully. It always the question that begs to be answered is who represents the people? If you look at the policy documents, what does the Uttarakhand government say? Okay, set up 5,000 homestays. By 2020, they were supposed to do it. Us samay lockdown ka pata nahi tha. Up 2022 ho gaya. They still have a target. They're chasing it. How does the industry look at us? Does it even consider, in the moving parts of the tourism industry, you have the tourist. Of course, you'll pay attention to them. You have the tourism tour operators. They fend for themselves. They have their association. But then you have two components that hardly get represented or talked about, which is who we are talking about in this collective and this meeting. And that's the people and the landscape on which they live. So who represents these people? The industry actually doesn't look at it. We are not part of their calculations. What happens to the landscape when the tourists have come and gone? You'll have destination management organizations that are being set up, but they are not talking about the interests of the people who live there or the landscape. So I think these are some red flags that I'm putting up for all of us who have now begun to see homestay as a livelihood option. One can understand that happening because people do want to go to remote areas. And as Sumesh said, now the hunger for experiences and, getting away from urban realities that are really very harsh, that has become an increased pressure. But what happens to these people and these places? So the industry doesn't have any consideration for it. In fact, they're just buttressing themselves and the government is totally supporting them in creating an industry that does not really look at, you'll have police, you'll have tourism police, but not for the local people, but you'll have them for the protection of tourists. This is the general scenario that we are, looking at. So eventually what happens? Either you invisibilize the community that lives on those landscapes where tourists come, or you exoticize them. Ashish ji ne kaha ki, in Madhya Pradesh, we still have a living culture, ek jeevan shaili hai. People are still, it's not a museum, people are not museum pieces. Wahan par abhi bhi khaprel ke gharon mein rahenge. They will still make those things with their own hands for their own daily use. So there is a trap. Because from invisibilization, the easiest thing is to exoticize them. Dekhiye kya khas hai hum. And ek tarah se hum museum pieces bana diye jate hain. We are put out on display. So this is another red flag that I'd like to, mark so that we come back to it. What does it do to our people? What does it do to a community like ours or other remote communities to which now, rural tourism ko hum badhawa de rahe hain, but what is happening? And that is a deep-seated alienation. Hota kya hai? And this is not just with tourism, this is with every industry. You will first come and appropriate the resources, tell the people you don't belong here. This happens with tiger reserves, this happens in the name of environment. You first displace them, then you create a little model and then hand it over to the government. So it becomes a namuna. I'm sorry, our experiences have been both enabling and also very challenging. So I do want to share exactly how the alienation process works. But there is, another way, which is inclusion. But inclusion ko bhi agar hum dekhe, how do you actually include people with swabhiman? When we talk about a forum, in a forum like this, where we talk about dignity, swabhiman, and we're talking about being creative and affording a dignified livelihood. How does one do it? बहुत सारे catchwords हैं. And again, I'm just going to put it out. We're all people who worked with communities. So कोई नई बात नहीं कह रही हूँ, but I'm just grabbing onto those words and then questioning ourselves, our commitment. One word is collectivize. Of course, we must collectivize. But collectivize कैसे करें? There's a managerial approach. There's a sarkari approach where you collectivize, and what do you find very soon? That the people who you're working with, jiski zameen hai, jiski dharohar hai, the people who live on that land, whose culture it is, Before you know it, they become beneficiaries. मालिक से वो beneficiary कैसे हो गए? पर वो language है, and this is a language of power. We'll form clusters, we'll work with them, we'll even train them. उदाहरण के लिए उत्तराखंड सरकार बहुत सारी ट्रेनिंग्स देती है. You know, गांव घर में आप किसको सिखाओगे कि अतिथि को कैसे आप स्वागत करो? You don't need to teach people this. Atiti Devo Bhavo, and this is part of our culture. So, unfortunately, we have the government giving hotel management training. You know, कांटा छुरी गांव घर में जरूरत नहीं है. बहुत सारी चीजें जो hotels में सिखाते हैं, you don't need to give inappropriate training where you're actually undermining the essential strength of the community. So, one thing that I think will move towards inclusion is if you work on the prevailing strengths of the rural community, which is they know how to look after people. How do you strengthen their own hands to be able to host people? Another problem that I think that happens is over publicity. Part of the syndrome of exoticization. आप हमारे प्रदेश आए, आप हमारे ग्रामीण जीवन में देखिए, but you know what? Not normal people, not people who live with their aspirations and their struggles in today's world. But it's again exoticizing. We're different because we are this, that, and the other. हम अभी भी ऐसे घरों में रहते हैं वगैरह, which to me is very dangerous. Again, another big red flag, because what it takes away from the person whose home people are coming to is their essential dignity. क्योंकि अचानक आपको perform करना पड़ रहा है, क्योंकि लोग एक तस्वीर लेकर आए हैं. They've come with an image of what you're supposed to be, and they get disappointed. अरे आपके घर में तो tiles है, you have tiles in your home or you have a fridge in your home, but people are changing, people are aspiring, and one's not saying that, you know, all homestays have to be the same kind or rural tourism should be the same kind, but if you're talking about giving agency, then we just have to be careful that we don't over publicize or exoticize. And then another problem, अब rural tourism की ओर हम बढ़ रहे हैं, and of course we agree, you know, rural areas must get the benefit of tourism, but can every homestay, every village home be a homestay? You know, this is where the government seems to think that this is government, and maybe a lot more people, maybe sometimes even we think that this is one livelihood option that lends itself readily. But let's face it, if the market gets oversaturated, if every other home becomes a homestay, it's going to actually erode, corrode the essential fabric of community life. आप यूरोप में देख लीजिए, people have now begun to put up big hoarding saying this is not tourism, this is invasion. क्योंकि उनकी खुद की जिंदगी, their own lives have got so disrupted. And therefore, I mean, we all know that we say, you know, tourism is a double-edged sword and all that, double-edged sword. कहना आसान है, but you know, sometimes we are feeding into that same narrative by saying, you know, tourism is the answer. So I feel that eventually folks like us need to recognize these, you know, fault lines, these pitfalls, and begin to address them. The industry will look at us at best as service providers or employees, and in their pyramid, we are at the bottom. Rural tourism people are at the bottom. चाहे आप artisan हो, आप homestay हो, you know, वो आपको एक list दे देंगे कि आप इस तरह से खाना खिलाएं, ऐसे करें. But that's not what's going to make tourism work, because it's undignified to be just considered a service provider when actually you're the malik, you're the owner. You own the landscape, you will be there long after the tourists have come and gone, you're dependent on those resources. Therefore, you have to be extremely careful of who uses it and how. I can only do that if I'm the malik. I can only do that when I have the decision-making powers. And that's where we come to the self-owned model, the model that we've tried to, you know, follow. Of course, we've struggled. I'm not saying that being part of an industry is always easy. We have our pitfalls. But the fact is that hamara jo, the approach we've had is first and foremost, मैं घर की मालकिन हूँ. Anybody coming to visit me, आप मेरे guest हैं, आप मेरे client नहीं हैं. As soon as you enter the market, of course, it's going to be a transaction. But let's understand where on the hierarchy we're located. And if we don't assert ourselves and, retake our power, or at least recognize that we are in the center of the narrative. अगर हम नहीं हैं तो आप हमारे गांव नहीं आ सकते. So एक तो मालिक का एक एहसास जिससे first of all you get your dignity, जिसको हम अपनी मूल पहचान कहते हैं, हमारा मूल व्यवसाय, our primary livelihood. Like for instance, in a village like Sarmoli, from where I work, we still are dependent on agriculture, and therefore agriculture is a centerpiece of our tourism enterprise. Wool work is something that we've done for a long time. We are not going to stop all our work and just attend to tourists. We continue to do that as our primary income, and we work with tourists and tourism, and that brings in our cash income. तो हमारी कहानी क्या है? When tourists come, they ask us, आप क्या करते हैं? We'll say, मैं किसान हूँ, मैं बुनकर हूँ. मैं ये नहीं कहूँगी मैं सिर्फ होम स्टे हूँ, होम स्टे भी करती हूँ. But that changes the equation entirely. Somebody who first comes and looks at us as, चलिए, provide me the services that I've paid you for, begins to now then look at us as somebody who owns and lives on the landscape in a responsible way, and their entire equation begins to change. The other thing that we have said, हर चीज बिकाऊ नहीं है. And I think this is very important for those of us who, are natural resource based, who are also providing a service. क्योंकि लोगों को लगता है, देखिए ये तो tourism है, हम तो एक we've come to experience something. Now tell us, how are you going to entertain us? What are you going to sell? Oh, you've got a lovely, carpet done. ये मैं खरीदना चाहती हूँ. मुझे आपका ये बहुत पसंद आया, मुझे वो खरीदना है. And we have said, let's watch it, because on this continuum, many things are up for sale. We all know about sex tourism. We all know about what happens with children. It's a, मतलब आप पहले तो घर के अंदर ले आए हैं. वो पब्लिक एंड प्राइवेट स्पेस का जो सेपरेशन होता है होटल में, आपने वो तोड़ दिया है. अचानक आपके घर में लोग हैं और आप उनके साथ ट्रांजैक्ट कर रहे हैं. So how do you protect yourself? What is the safety net? For all of us who are working with artisans, all of us who are working with rural tourism people, the power equation is so uneven that if we don't have a safety net and some rules, the vulnerability is only going to be increased by bringing tourists and people with money to experience, to buy an experience, buy things. So हमारे यहाँ हमने ये बिल्कुल साफ कहा है कि हर चीज बिकाऊ नहीं है. हम घर से नहीं बेचेंगे, क्योंकि घर से आप क्या क्या बेचेंगे फिर? कई चीजें बिकती हैं. So we've collectivized, but we've also got a संगठन. We've got a place, some place where भावतोल नहीं होगा, जहां पर आप अपनी गरीबी या अपनी दोस्ती या there's so many ways in that power equation that your power is taken away from your hands. We also talk about dukh sukh, because for us, while tourism brings in the cash income to our communities and each home, we talk about this, we call it a formula, dukh sukh ka formula, in which we say if sukh is paisa and dukh is struggle, there is no way you can do this without actually being ready to stand up as a community for each other. For example, if ever there is a situation where somebody is harassed by a tourist or doesn't like what's happening, wo akeli nahi hai. The whole community stands with her. If there is somebody who's getting beaten up in a home and runs a homestay, she's got money coming in, but she's not safe in her own home, that's not the tourism we want. If we are not willing to stand with that woman in her everyday lives as an active citizen, so that's not the tourism that we will opt for. So this dukh sukha formula is another thing that we've, paid attention to, that it's not just wealth creation or just a livelihood, it's well-being that we're looking for. We also give back to the landscape. Logon ki to humne baat ki hi, but how are we looking after the place that people are coming to see? After all, ये धरोहर हमारे कुछ होमस्टे वालों की तो नहीं है, हिमालयन आर्ट वालों की ही नहीं है. There is a one panchayat. And so when we had started our work, we had basically said, look, काम तो हम सब करते, everybody goes out to work, but nobody wants to come for common tasks. Nobody wants to do shramdan because that the benefit of it doesn't accrue directly to me. मेरे पास time नहीं है. So we said, all right, those who don't have time, mat aaiye. But those of us who are willing to give time for the upkeep of our forests, for conserving it, doing shramdan, can join the homestay. And even today, even though we are now out of the Van Panchayat and run as a company, we still put a percentage of our earning back into the upkeep of the forest. That has continued. Ab theek hai, we are one little business and we are doing this. Is it enough? Can one business contribute to the upkeep of the forest and say, humne bahut kar liya? We realized, nahi, it won't happen. To look after the landscape, the entire community has to be involved. So what we've done is we work actively with the Gram Panchayat. And like the Gram Panchayat has a Swas Samiti, a health committee, livelihoods committee, education committee, we have a tourism committee now. And in the tourism committee, all enterprises that are today earning from homestay, or from a hotel, or from running a taxi, or from a dukan, we are saying that you have to look at the impact of tourism on the village as a community, as in its entirety. So it's, kya hota hai? It's like, it's quite easy. It's a public asset, but it's private gain. So how do we challenge that? Eventually, I would say that at the core of rural tourism has to be the community. And like I first asked the question, who represents the community? Hota kya hai with artisans, with rural communities, because as it is, we are so fractured by caste, class, men, women, gender. There's so many things that divide us. So then who will eventually represent the community? And I do feel that for rural tourism, to do it as individual entities is going to be very, very challenging. It will actually be, in the long run, very hurtful, because the alienation will only increase. It's a very consumption-oriented industry. उपभोग करने के लिए लोग आते हैं, leisure के लिए आते हैं, experiences खरीदने के लिए आते हैं. And if we do not create a safety net, and if we do not create appropriate representation, who represents the people, amorphous people, tourism might end up, doing just what it does in every other place across the globe. Last thing I would like to say is that, you started, Sumesh, by saying, the lockdown and the challenges it threw out to the entire global community. What did we find? We found that rural areas were resilient because हमारा जो resource base था, उसको हमने बचा के रखा है. Our dependence on, we could grow our own food. We had our access to our own water. We weren't thrown out of our homes. Exactly what happened to urban people, especially at the lower rungs. After the lockdown, we've heard about, things like reset, rethink, rebuild. The tourism industry has been using these, terms very happily, but we are back to business as usual. And sometimes I am a little, what should I say? I won't say skeptical, but I'm worried that, good-hearted folks like us who have the best intentions, towards communities, all those red flags that I've just marked out, do we sometimes also, start looking at communities as passive people whose lot needs to be improved by rural tourism and homestay? Or are we actually giving them the agency, handing back the power where it belongs? Thank you.
Thank you, Malika ji. It was very interesting to hear you. I think you're rightfully talking about, changing, a narrative in tourism through your practice. That's very interesting. And you really emphasize the participation of local communities in various aspects of tourism. That's really interesting. You raised several questions, and, one is definitely who represent, people. That's a very relevant question in tourism. And also the other question you asked, what's happening to what happens to the landscape? So these all are some interesting questions you raised. I'm sure we will have more discussion on that. And again, you also talked about dignified livelihood. I think, the organization who's organizing this talk also, creative dignity. So that's a very interesting point to further discuss, I'm sure. And of course, you also talked about over publicity and exoticizing. I know we're also facing a lot of similar experience when in our practice also. So I'm sure it is a common challenges we are all face who are practicing. And I think some of the points you made, it's really interesting. One is, you are propagating a self-owned model rather than, so that is also creating a lot of dignity and so on. And you also talked about power equation and safety net. I think it is very important, and you rightfully pointed out how tourism creating vulnerability in villages and all. So those are the very important points which you raised here. And I'm sure we will come back to you. And I'm sure there are a lot of questions already and some opinions also came into the comment box. So I'm sure we will have more to, discuss with you. So I will, of course, there are two very experienced people. They kind of share their experience. So it is really challenging for me to tell my own story. But Bhakti, I don't want that PowerPoint because, we can make it slightly informal because, others also did the same thing. I can share my experience. I'm basically, coming from a very different background because I came from an activist background to tourism. I've been very active in some of the environment and social movements of Kerala. And that's where I got into tourism because Kerala was promoting tourism in a big way. And they were trying to bring tourism as a development option for the state. Still, most of the Indian states are following the same model, like Malika ji was also pointing out. So that created a lot of negative impacts of tourism in the state. I'm not getting into all the details, like which is environment, social, and Malika ji was also talking about some of the problems. These all are continuing problems, for many years. For me, I'm familiar with all these problems for last two and a half decades, but still the problem continues. Like, she also pointed out that, some sort of a, worrying, thoughts she already shared with us. And of course, the tourism industry language also changed significantly. If you really get into the language, like for example, earlier it was travelers. Now we are all using tourist. That's a terminology, and places became products. It's all changes which took place, and experiences now, so-called packages. Even sometimes we are also using that. We also got into that trap, and guests became consumers. And hosts are kind of suppliers. So I'm not telling all this, but I think, and value is, the value is always, weighing with price. So it's all changes took place, and that's a context we are starting our work. We started our community-based tourism activities in a small, tiny village in a district called Wayanad. Wayanad is considered to be one of the backward district in Kerala. So when we started our program, Wayanad was facing, even today, a severe agrarian crisis. After Vidarbha, Wayanad was the place where most of the farmers committed suicide. And at the same time, especially 2004, 2005, that's a year. Of course, the proximity of Bangalore was an advantage for Wayanad to being a tourism destination. So tourism industry and certain extent government started promoting Wayanad as a tourism destination. And certain extent, they were propagating that tourism could be an alternative to, agriculture, which is already in crisis. But when we started our program, our argument was tourism cannot be an alternative to agriculture, not just agriculture. Malika ji rightfully, pointed out it. It can be an additional income for agriculture, and farmers can take it as an additional income. That's the strategy we started right from the beginning. And we started a couple of farmer homestays, and when we started farmer homestays and all, we realized that there are other activities, required, and also some of the problems which Malika ji already pointed out emerged. So we had to deal all with this. That's how we started our a program. So basically, we are also learning through our practice, because none of us have got any background in tourism and all. Our asset was definitely our activism and definitely the kind of an experience we have with communities like fishermen, Adivasis, and so on. So that's how we started. But when we started, we realized some of the problems. Like I'm not repeating it because Malika ji pointed out very clearly. But we wanted a participatory tourism, and we are all trying to do that. But when it comes to the question of participation, that is also kind of a kind of a very misleading kind of a concept. I mean, NGOs have their own version, government have their own version, but we are trying to define what is participation at community level. Like Malika ji pointed out some of the practices here. I'm trying to put it into 3 or 4 broad categories. And we found that 4 levels of participation, which is very important. One is participation in decision making. It can be anything. Panchayat could be one area, where we can work with. We are also working a lot with panchayats. I mean, especially at Gram Panchayat level, using the powers, the constitutional powers which they have got and all. So another one is participation in business. I think it is very important, where the dignity, I mean, dignified, a profession and all very relevant, because tourism industry always say that, yeah, we are also getting local participation and we are giving enough income and all. Like she explained that the terminology called beneficiaries, but I think self-owned. I mean, she explained the concept of self-owned. That's very important. So a meaningful participation in business, which is very important. And the third is definitely participation in managing tourism, which is special significant. Malika ji also explained that, especially managing destinations. Who is going to manage the destination? Because large number of visitors are coming to a certain destination or landscape, and who is going to regulate and who is going to control? That's a very important question. And she asked that question again, what's happens to the landscape and also people, of course. And the fourth one is participation in monitoring tourism, because, both industry and state promoting tourism as a development option under the notion that tourism can bring everything. So I mean, and even now UN and now even our government is also talking about sustainable development goals and tourism and all. So comprehensive development and tourism and all. So what is the indicators to assess or monitor to assess the impact of tourism? I mean the positive impacts also, not just negative. So these all are very important questions in tourism. So we are trying to understand a couple of things through our practice. One is, of course, we are also trying to develop some methodologies through our practice. I'm not getting into all these details. We have 4 categories and we try to address that. But one area which I would like to discuss here today, because there are a lot of designers and people, those who are interested in craft here, we are now trying to apply the concept of participatory design in tourism. So we found that it's really interesting. In a usual tourism situation, what happens, a tour operator like me or somebody going to a village from Bangalore and say that this can be marketed and design it and curate like this. And that's usually what happens. So what we are trying to do now, we develop some methodologies where we can do a resource mapping with villages, and villages themselves are doing the resource mapping, and they are identifying the resources which they can provide us experience or whatever. And of course, the entire curation is happening, costing is happening. I mean, that is also a design basically. So the entire, I'm not getting into all the details, but the entire tour is designed by communities. So we found that it's really, really interesting and effective, because many of the problems which we discussed today can be addressed at the design level. So like for example, when it comes to culture, there are a lot of sensitivity involved in it. Like there are certain restrictions, it's also related to certain beliefs and certain things of the community. So community themselves can, explain that this is possible, this is not possible, and all. The kind of an ownership is another issue. Like for example, once I think Gandhi pointed out that if you are buying a furniture and if you are designing a furniture, both are different. If you're designing a furniture, there are a lot of intellectual, process and creative process involved in it. The ownership, everything will be different. So, so I think this approach is very important, and I mean, of course, I can share those experiences in any time. And I would like to point out one more thing, one more concept, and I'll stop. Basically, now we are working with a concept called thoughtful travel. I mean, basically, when you do travel, there are broadly three sections of people involved in it. One section, definitely travelers, they are traveling to various places. The other section is those people who are providing services for the travelers. Like it could be airline, it could be buses, transport, guides, homestays, I mean, hotels, everything can come under that category. And the third category is the important category, that is the local community living in the destinations. Broadly speaking, these all are the categories involved in a travel or tourism. So what is happening in a normal tourism situation, I mean, with all these digital technologies and all, traveler always trying to, exploit the service provider because they're looking for cheap options, unnecessary demands. Malika ji was also talking about some experiences and all, exotism and all those coming with a lot of expectations and so on. And what happens from tourism service providers, they're also trying to exploit the travelers because they want more money. I mean, a lot of things anyway. And when it comes to local communities, they get all the plastic waste and so on, because both the parties, they are putting all the waste, everything on local communities, and not much meaningful benefits also. So this is a usual tourism scenario. But thoughtful travel is basically an ideal situation. I mean, it's a kind of a very romantic concept, but still, where all these three people, are involved in a kind of a meaningful transaction. Of course, it's all about transactions, where the ultimate aim of a traveler is good experiences. I mean, that has to be defined because people are also going to Thailand for also quote unquote good, experience that can be defined definitely. And of course, as a service provider, he's looking for good traveler because less bargaining, good price, not too much expectations and so on. And obviously, the local community, they want their ownership, benefits, and not waste. So this is a kind of an ideal situation where all these people can come together and work together. And I'm sure it is possible. I mean, of course, I'm also a bit frustrated with all these 2 decades of tourism experience because when you're also working as an activist, most of the time you get negative stories and all. But as a practitioner, I'm getting a lot of positive stories also. So I'm also bringing a lot of optimism here. To set up a kind of network and so on. So I'm stopping here. Definitely, all of you have a lot of questions and sharing. I mean, I'm sure there are other people also want to share experience, and we can open the floor for questions and sharing of experience. And thank you very much, Malika ji and Ashish ji, for your experience. And I mean, I could see a lot of similarities between us, all of us. And I'm sure this kind of a platform is also giving us more a feeling of togetherness or more confidence and so on. And thank you very much.
Before you, Sumesh, before you open up, can I just add some of the things?
Please, Ashish ji, please.
I just, while listening to Malika ji, ये सारी चीज, जितनी चीजें वो बता रहे थे, तो ऐसा लग रहा था कि एक भी ऐसी चीज ऐसी नहीं थी जिससे मैं इको नहीं कर पा रहा था. So it all were echoing over there. एंड जो सबसे बड़ी बात, अभी पिछले हफ्ते मुझे पुणे जाना हुआ, इस डिफरेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बात चल रही थी और वहाँ हमारी रश्मि रानडे जी भी थी, तो हमारे सीडी कम्युनिटी से ही जुड़ी हुई हैं. एंड देन शी आस्क्ड अ क्वेश्चन ओवर देयर, एंड इन रिस्पांस टू दैट व्हाट आई हैड टू से वाज कि भाई हम लोग आज जो बहुत कुछ कर रहे हैं, आर्टिसन सेक्टर में है, ट्रेवल सेक्टर में है, किसी और सेक्टर में है, ये सारी सेक्टर्स में या और रूरल डेवलपमेंट वाले हैं, कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट की और चीजें, लाइवलीहुड प्रमोशन नया नया क्या है वो भी काफी पुराना हो गया है, ये सारी चीजों में कर रहे हैं. लेकिन क्या करना है, इससे ज्यादा महत्व की चीज होती है कि क्या नहीं करना है. हम क्या करने के एक्साइटमेंट में बहुत कुछ वहां करने की कोशिश करते हैं, टूरिज्म में ये कर लेंगे, इसमें ये करेंगे, उसमें उस तरह से करेंगे, लेकिन अब हमारे पास फॉर्चुनेटली इफ वी गो अराउंड द वर्ल्ड, मतलब वर्ल्ड तो छोड़ दीजिए, हम आसपास भी देख लेते हैं, अपने भारत के एक्सपीरियंसेस देख लेते हैं, अलग अलग राष्ट्र के, अलग अलग राज्यों के, स्टेट्स के एक्सपीरियंस देख लेते हैं, तो पता चलता है कि जो कुछ करने की चाह में जो कुछ करना चाह रहे थे वो कितना गड़बड़ करके बैठते हैं। सो डूइंग जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ डूइंग, कि हम ये सब सोच साच के करके बैठे हैं, लेकिन उससे ज्यादा महत्व की चीज है कि हम ये देखें कि क्या क्या नहीं करना है। ये एक बहुत मुझे लगा कि ये चीजें हमारे इस चीज में भी, जिस तरह के एक्सपीरियंसेस मलिका जी ने बताए कि कहाँ कहाँ हम उन सब चीजों से बचा जा सके। और दूसरी चीज जो जो एक और चीज जिनसे इको कर रहा हूं मैं, कि हिंदी में कहावत है कि बिना मरे स्वर्ग नहीं मिलता है। तो हम सोचें कम्युनिटी कोई और, हम कोई और, फैसिलिटेटर, ये वो मतलब मैं अपना व्यक्तिगत एक्सपीरियंस बताऊं तो आई हैव बीन have worked in NGOs, have worked in government projects, have worked in corporates, have given consultancies, established my own enterprises and all those things, but then realize कि भाई ये सारा चीज करके कुछ होता नहीं है जब तक आप खुद वहां नहीं उतरे। जो वहां मलिका जी कर रही हैं, मैं यहाँ 4-5 साल से कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, और फिर उसके बाद ये सारी चीज अपने आप हो जाता है। तो आपको यदि कुछ करना है, मरना है, तो मतलब स्वर्ग जाना है तो मरना तो पड़ेगा। So if you want something good to happen, then we'll have to invest into it. That's it. We can open it to other people.
Thank you.
So thank you. This has been a very, very thought-provoking session. Do we open it up to questions now and a discussion with, I think few people have left, but we still have at least 17 people.
17.
Yeah. So I have one question also, and in fact, I'm going to ask Harish to share about the Kutch experience. So, what happens, jab, the community, their income from tourism goes way above the income they're getting from other things like agriculture or artisanship, whatever the craft work they're doing, or other sources of income. What happens then? Because then clearly the whole economic force has its own logic, right? And that is what we have seen in Kutch. So Harish, actually, it would be nice if you can also share a little bit about, what tourism has done to livelihoods in Kutch and how it has changed attitudes and so on. So it'd be interesting to know how you guys deal with this situation.
Okay. So ये कच्छ का जो पूरा जो टूरिज्म का सिनेरियो है, इसमें इट स्टार्टेड आफ्टर 2001 अर्थक्वेक, जिसमें जो टूरिज्म का थोड़ा सोचा गया, और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने भी जो रोल प्ले किया, दैट वाज लाइक, शायद आप लोग जानते होंगे शामे सरहद, जो कि होड़को विलेज में है, और एक रूरल टूरिज्म में एक काम हुआ है उसमें। तो शुरुआत जब उनका तो मेनली ऑक्यूपेशन जो था वो तो एनिमल हस्बेंड्री और उसके साथ जुड़े थे, बहनें जो थी वो क्राफ्ट्स के साथ जुड़ी हुई थी, पूरा नोमेड कल्चर था और पूरे एरिया में। जैसे जैसे टूरिज्म डेवलप हुआ, क्योंकि 2004 में ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, यूएनडीपी, गवर्नमेंट सब ने मिलके इस ये पूरे रूरल रिसोर्ट को सपोर्ट करके बनवाया, और कम्युनिटी का बहुत क्लियरली मानना था कि हम टूरिज्म को या टूरिस्ट को हमारे घरों तक नहीं ला सकते हैं, इसलिए हम एक कॉमन स्ट्रक्चर बनाएंगे जहाँ पे टूरिज्म हो सकता है। तो इस तरह से ये पूरा एक रिसोर्ट, रूरल रिसोर्ट बना था वहाँ पे। सालों के चलते कुछ सालों बाद पूरा जो वाइट डेजर्ट जो है, जो रन है हमारा, उसको गवर्नमेंट ने प्रोजेक्ट किया, मास टूरिज्म की तरह प्रोजेक्ट हुआ वो। आज वहाँ पे 400 टेंट सिटी लगता है, टूरिस्ट काफ़ी आने शुरू हुए। आपने जो बोला कि जो डिमांडिंग टूरिज्म है वो शुरू हुआ, काफ़ी सारे नए जो बोलते हैं ना कि स्टेज बन गए, जैसे होम स्टेज की हम बात करते हैं वो भी बन रहे हैं, या अपने अपने लोगों ने अपने अपने रिसोर्ट बनाए, बाहर से लोग आए उन्होंने भी अपने रिसोर्ट्स बनाए। आज अगर आप देखें तो होड़को और ये जो 20 किलोमीटर का जो एरिया है उसी में कम से कम 40 से ज़्यादा रिसोर्ट्स वहाँ पे हैं, जिसको लोग अपने रिवर रिसोर्ट की तरह उस तरह से चला रहे हैं। क्राफ्ट जो है वो भी साइड में रह गया है, और जो मेन विलेजेस जो कि टूरिज्म के विलेजेस है, होड़को है, धोरडो है, ये यहाँ पे जो एनिमल हस्बेंड्री या जो मेनली प्राइमरी ऑक्यूपेशन हुआ करता था वो भी यानी शायद कम हुआ है, हम जो देख रहे हैं उस तरह से, क्योंकि कच्छ का टूरिज्म जो है वैसे तो क्या है कि 4 महीने का टूरिज्म है, यहाँ पे पूरे साल तो टूरिज्म होता नहीं है, जो है वो विंटर्स में होता है। विंटर्स के सिवाय के समय में आज भी एनिमल हस्बेंड्री हो रहा है, और जो डेयरीज है लाइक अमूल इज हियर, सरहद डेयरी और सारी डेयरीज यहाँ पे है, तो उसके कारण जो पूरा मिल्क के साथ में जो पूरा रिवोल्यूशन जो है वो भी इस एरिया में आया है। तो यानी 2000 के अर्थक्वेक के पहले का सिनेरियो और आज के सिनेरियो में काफ़ी चेंज है। पहले जो होता था ड्राउट्स होते थे, माइग्रेशन होता था पशुओं के कारण, पानी नहीं होता था, इन चीज़ों के ये इश्यूज थे, उनके ग्रासलैंड के इश्यूज थे। आज ये सारे इश्यूज है, उसके साथ साथ उनके मास टूरिज्म उनका एक अलग इश्यू है। आज उनके जो पैसा जो है, इतना पैसा है कि आज उनके जो बच्चे हैं वो ये सब जो एनिमल हस्बेंड्री उसमें तो वो काम करना नहीं चाहते हैं, वो पूरा दिन गाड़ी लेंगे, बाइक लेंगे, घूमेंगे, मोबाइल पे होंगे, ये सब चीज़ें याद है। काफ़ी सारी चीज़ों में चेंज आया है इन सब चीज़ों के कारण। क्या सही है गलत है ये कहना तो बहुत मुश्किल है, क्योंकि डेवलपमेंट तो अपने तरीके से होता है, और अगर हम कहीं इन्वॉल्व हो या ना हो, कम्युनिटी का डेवलपमेंट भी अपनी तरीके से होगा। जैसे मलिका जी ने कहा कि भाई आपको हमारे घर में टाइल्स देख के ऐसा लगता है कि ये तो कुछ अलग है जो हमने एक्सपेक्ट किया था, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है, वो तो समय के साथ हर चीज़ चेंज होती है। लेकिन यहाँ पे शायद इस एरिया में काफ़ी जल्दी जो चेंज आया है। मास टूरिज्म के कारण क्या हो रहा है कि रण जो है, रण भी हर साल बहुत अंदर जा रहा है, हर साल आपको ज़्यादा अंदर जाना पड़ता है इफ़ यू वांटेड टू एक्सपीरियंस दैट साल्टी मार्शल लैंड जो है, पूरा नमक वाला ज़मीन जो है वो धीरे धीरे पीछे जा रहा है। अगर इसी तरह चलता रहा तो ये नमक का रण जो है वो देखने शायद सालों के बाद ना भी मिले, या बहुत अंदर जाना पड़े आपको ये परिस्थिति। जो बर्ड्स थे यहाँ पे, जो पूरा सेंचुरी था बर्ड का, जहाँ पे आते थे फ्लैमिंगोज जो आते, अब उसमें भी काफ़ी डिस्टर्बेंस खड़ा हुआ है, क्योंकि काफ़ी सारे टूरिस्ट आ रहे हैं, काफ़ी सारे लोग आ रहे हैं, गाड़ियाँ लेके आते हैं। इवन गवर्नमेंट जो परमिट करती है उसके बाद रात के समय भी रन के अंदर भी गाड़ियाँ जाती हैं, तो काफ़ी सारा डिस्टर्बेंस खड़ा हुआ है। जो बर्ड्स आते थे माइग्रेटरी वो भी कम हुआ है पिछले सालों में, उन्होंने काफ़ी लोकेशन चेंज हुए बर्ड्स के, और जो चीज़ें पहले होती थी उस तरह से आज की तारीख में नहीं है। तो ये काफ़ी सारे जो बदलाव है वो इसके कारण आया है, क्योंकि टूरिज्म इस तरह से है। और ये कम्युनिटी जो नॉमेड कम्युनिटी हुआ करती, जो उनकी आइडेंटिटी थी, आज भी उस आइडेंटिटी को बरकरार रखने के लिए वो लोग अपने प्रयत्न तो उनके चालू हैं, लेकिन उनकी लाइफस्टाइल में बहुत बड़ा चेंज आ गया है। आज सारे लोग जो है, सबके पास शायद गाड़ियाँ होगी, सब लोग जो है अपने खुद के रिसोर्ट, सामेसर के जो मेंबर्स थे जो इसको चलाया करते थे, जितने मेंबर, शायद उनमें काफ़ी सारे मेंबर शायद उनके खुद के रिसोर्ट्स हैं आज। तो आज उनकी प्रायोरिटी वो कॉमन रिसोर्ट जो विलेज का था वो शायद इतना प्रायोरिटी नहीं है जितना प्रायोरिटी अपना खुद का रिसोर्ट है। क्या तो ये सब चीज़ें हुई है मेरा दिन, मुझे लगता है।
if I have to just add on to this, मीरा जी, मैंने जैसे अपने काम के बारे में बताया था, शर्मा जी के बारे में जो हम लोग बात कर रहे थे, तो जो काम जो है वो, यदि इसको एक फ्रेज में समराइज करें तो आर्टिसन सेंट्रिक लाइफस्टाइल, दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव बीन ट्राइंग टू डू। अब हमारा जो पूरा जो अनुभव रहा है 10-20 साल का, अलग अलग, जैसे मैंने बताया ये सारी चीजों रविंद्र शर्मा जी के साथ देख के, ये हर जगह ये स्थिति आ रही है। जहां पैसा आता है, पैसा आने के बाद जो चीजें होती हैं वो उसी तरह की चीज होती है, और सबसे बड़ी चीज है जिसको अपने पैर पे कुल्हाड़ी मारना बोलते हैं ना, उस तरह की चीजें भी हो रही हैं कि भाई आप आर्टिसन सेंट्रिक लाइफस्टाइल, जैसे अब आर्टिसंस के साथ में भी हम लोग चीजें आ रही हैं, लेकिन पैसा होके जब पैसा उनको मिल रहा है, ठीक है मिलना चाहिए, लेकिन फिर वो क्या कर रहे हैं, फिर वो कारखानों वाली चीजें खरीद रहे हैं, जो बड़े कारखाने, जो बड़े इंडस्ट्रियलाइज प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनको खरीद रहे हैं। तो जो अपने ही पैर पे कुल्हाड़ी मारना बोलते हैं जिसको, तो आप इतना सारा उनको इनकम तो बढ़ रही है, लाइवलीहुड मिल रहा है, इनकम बढ़ रही है, लेकिन उस इंक्रीज इनकम से क्या हो रहा है, ये पूरा जो इंडस्ट्रियलाइज एंड प्रोडक्शन वाली चीजें हैं वो, और ये हर चीज में हो रही है, हर जगह पे हो रही है। इसीलिए जो मैं एक जो बात कर रहा था कि ये छोटे छोटे जगहों पे अपने खुद के, अपने या अपने से जो मोटिवेटेड होके एक प्रोग्राम जैसे कोई भी चलाए, चाहे वो एनजीओ के माध्यम से हो, चाहे वो गवर्नमेंट के माध्यम से हो, या किसी और कंपनी सोशल एंटरप्राइज के माध्यम से हो, जहां जो बहुत कलेक्टिवाइजेशन का भी एक इशू है। जैसे ये जो जैसे हडको का एग्जांपल बता रहे हैं कि जैसे ही एक कलेक्टिवाइजेशन होता है जहां लोगों को लगने लगता है कि एक वायबल ऑप्शन है, सो कॉल्ड वायबल ऑप्शन है, द सेम थिंग हैपेंड विद एवरीथिंग। सी एजुकेशन इन इंडिया, मतलब आई एम स्लाइटली जनरलाइजिंग इट, एजुकेशन इन इंडिया यूज्ड टू बी अ सर्विस प्रोग्राम, इट विद्यादान की चीज होती थी। हर जगह पुराने जितने भी स्कूल्स देखेंगे, दे यूज्ड टू बी अ सोसाइटी ओनली। हेल्थ सिमिलरली, ऑल द हॉस्पिटल्स यूज्ड टू बी सोसाइटीज इफ एट ऑल। वैद्य जो होते थे वो तो वैद्य तो पैसा लेते ही नहीं थे, लेकिन जैसे ये सारी माइक्रो फाइनेंस व्हेन इट केम अप, इट वाज अ वेल थॉट ऑफ प्रोग्राम व्हिच वाज बेसिकली इन द एनजीओ फॉर्मेट सेटअप में, कि लोगों की इनकम जैसे ये वायबल हुए, इकोनॉमिकली वायबल जैसे ही हुए, इन सब ने सत्यानाश करना शुरू किया. नाउ एजुकेशन हैज बिकम एन इंडस्ट्री, हेल्थ हैज बिकम एन इंडस्ट्री, माइक्रो फाइनेंस हैज बिकम एन इंडस्ट्री, टूरिज्म विल बिकम एन इंडस्ट्री इफ इट हैज नॉट ऑलरेडी. तो ये जो सारा कुछ मामला है, जैसे ही वो कलेक्टिवाइजेशन होता है, जैसे ही एक थ्रेशोल्ड लेवल से उसकी चीजें ज्यादा हो जाती हैं, मॉडल सेटअप होने लगते हैं, देन इट इज गॉन आउट ऑफ यू, देन मार्केट टेक्स ओवर. तो ये भी एक हमको देखना पड़ेगा कि हमारे जो एफर्ट्स है कितने लेवल तक, ये कितने बड़े तक होना चाहिए. जिसको ब्रेक इवन वाले कॉन्सेप्ट में लेके आया है, तो ब्रेक इवन होना चाहिए कि ब्रेक इवन से नीचे ही रहना चाहिए. So this applies to all the sectors, including tourism. गाँव में भी हम लोग जो देख रहे हैं, जो बात कर रहे हैं, जो हरीश जी बता रहे थे, उस सेंस में. थैंक यू.
आशीष जी, मुझे ये भी थोड़ा, इतने लोग हैं तो ये समझने की जरूरत है कि जब हम ये काम शुरू करते हैं तब हमारा मेन फोकस तो होता है कि एम्पावरमेंट की बात करते हैं, वो लोग एम्पावर हो. ना होड़को का एग्जाम्पल लेके तो इतने एम्पावर है कि वो तो किसी की सुनते नहीं, हमारी भी नहीं सुनते हैं यार, बहुत एम्पावर्ड है, ठीक है लोग. तब एम्पावरमेंट हो गया है. उसके बाद अगर हमको लगता है कि ये सही नहीं है या ये गलत है या जो है, तो एम्पावरमेंट के समय पे हमने जो सोचा था हमारे तरीके से नहीं हुआ, इसलिए हमको सही गलत लगता है. लेकिन वो तो एम्पावरमेंट है, वो तो एनवायरनमेंट के हिसाब से, समय के हिसाब से जो हुआ है. अब हमें सही गलत लगता है, वो लगता है, लेकिन उनके लिए सही है.
ना बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हैं आप. इसीलिए मैंने कहा, जो कीवर्ड डाला था कि हमको क्या करना है से ज्यादा इस चीज पे देखना है कि क्या नहीं करना है. क्या हम इस तरह के डेवलपमेंट को करना है या नहीं करना है. दैट इज व्हाट इज फर्स्ट थिंग दैट वी नीड टू, मतलब इतने समय के अनुभव के बाद तो हम कर ही सकते हैं. और जिसको हम एम्पावरमेंट बोल रहे हैं आज, वो मार्केट फोर्सेस के साथ बह जाना है. उसको हम मार्केट, मतलब आपके उससे कमान निकल के किसी और के पास चली गई वो कमान. मार्केट फोर्सेस
ये तो आपका बात सही है एकदम. आपने जो बोला हो, जो मलिका जी ने बोला वो भी सही इसी तरह. लेकिन ये हमारे इतने सालों के अनुभव के बाद हमको पता चला कि ये अगर नहीं, इस तरह से नहीं होना चाहिए था. ये होना चाहिए था लेकिन इस तरह से नहीं होना चाहिए था
जी.
लेकिन ठीक है, लेकिन अब वो किस तरह से होना चाहिए वो कौन करेगा, वो कैसे होना चाहिए, वो उसके लिए क्या करेंगे, क्योंकि ये तो एक्सटर्नल एनवायरनमेंट है. इस पर हम एक इनपुट देख सकते हैं. एक जगह पे काम किया हमने, अभी भी आज की तारीख में भी उसके लिए काम करेंगे. लेकिन जो हो गया है उसको किस तरह से वापस लाए, जो जैसे कि गिविंग टू द लैंडस्केप की बात जो मलिका जी ने की है, जो है वो कैसे करें, इसमें उसके लिए क्या एफर्ट्स करने चाहिए, वो बहुत जरूरी चीज है.
मेरे ख्याल से मलिका जी कुछ ऐड करना चाह रही हैं.
हाँ जी, मुझे लगता है कि देखिए, हमारी बात लोग क्यों सुन रहे हैं. हम लोग तो एक छोटा सा गांव, एक छोटी सी कम्युनिटी, एक छोटा सा बिजनेस है. वो हमारी बात इसलिए सुन रहे हैं क्योंकि हमने पैसा कमाया, हमारी आर्थिक स्थिति सुधरी है. क्या हम बहुत अमीर बनना चाहते हैं, क्या धनवान बनना चाहते हैं? एंड देन द मेन क्वेश्चन, यू नो, इट्स प्राइवेट प्रॉफिट एंड कॉमन कॉस्ट्स. प्रॉब्लम वहां आती है. हम ये नहीं देखते हैं कि हम कमा किसके जरिए रहे हैं. हमारे यहाँ भी वही चैलेंज है. हमारा होम स्टे विलेज डिक्लेयर हो गया है. अब हर तीसरा घर होम स्टे बनना चाहता है. वो कह रहे कलेक्टिव हम क्यों काम करें, जब प्राइवेटली मैं जल्दी में अमीर हो जाऊं तो मेरे को दूर जाने का क्या परवाह, क्योंकि किसी को परवाह नहीं है. वो कहते हैं ना, इफ यू वांट टू गो फार यू गो टुगेदर, इफ यू वांट टू गो क्विक यू गो अलोन. एंड पीपल आर ऑप्टिंग फॉर द सिंगुलर, I want to earn. So this is a phenomenon of the market. I agree with you. But nobody is saying that we should not earn. I'm not saying that if you, Ashish ji, जहां पर मैं आपसे थोड़ा सा मतलब कहने के तरीके में फर्क रखती हूँ, आपके सोच से बिल्कुल मैं सहमत हूँ. वो ये है कि हम लोगों को ये नहीं कह सकते कि आप इतने में संतुष्ट रहें. वो संतुष्टि कहाँ आएगी, वो अगर आप इस रूप से देखें कि इसकी कीमत क्या है, कौन कीमत अदा कर रहा है. और जैसे सुमेश ने कहा, देयर इज अ टूरिस्ट, देयर इज अ टूर ऑपरेटर्स एंड देयर आर द होस्ट्स और द सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स. But like with all issues, we forget the environment, we forget the landscape. Now, for us, it's very clear that on our landscape, not just those of us who are earning from tourism depend on it. The entire community depends on it. हम अपने प्राइवेट प्रॉफिट तो बना लेंगे, बट व्हाट अबाउट द कॉमन कॉस्ट्स? Unless we bring that into the narrative, unless we, repeatedly ask who is going to look after the landscape, nobody has a problem with anybody earning. If say for example, हरीश जी आपने कहा कच्छ में लोग अब बहुत कमा रहे हैं टूरिज्म से, उसमें खतरा क्या है? जब कोविड हुआ, and if you're dependent on external markets, what happens? आपका सारा ग्राहक ही बाहर से आके आपका सामान खरीदेगा, और जब इकोनॉमी गिरती है तो आपका फूड सिक्योरिटी गया, आपकी आइडेंटिटी गई, आपकी जो चीजें आपको सदियों से पाल रही थी वो सारी चीजों से आप फिर अनभिज्ञ रह गए, छूट गए. So what we are saying is resilience doesn't just come from amount of money you earn, or एक झोंके को आपने सह लिया. Resilience comes from the fact that we live with our landscape in a way that's balanced, and that is what we are saying. हमें किसी की कमाई से दिक्कत नहीं है, but why should we make private profit at common costs, which is the environment and the landscape?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you raised. Any other questions?
आई एग्री विथ मलिका जी. मलिका जी आपने जो बोला वो सही है, लेकिन जो हो रहा है, व्हाट इज, आपने जो बोला जो हो तो यही रहा है, तो फिर होना नहीं चाहिए लेकिन हो तो रहा है, तो दैट इज समथिंग, उसमें क्या करना चाहिए?
नहीं, एक चीज हरीश जी, मतलब ये तो हो गया, हो रहा है, होना नहीं चाहिए, ये दीज आर थ्री थिंग्स. एक और क्वेश्चन भी होना है या एक और स्टेटमेंट भी होना है कि अब क्या होना है. तो अभी इतनी यदि ये लर्निंग हमारी है तो उसके हिसाब से हम इसको अब डिसाइड कर सकते हैं. जैसे मलिका जी ने बताया, हम लोग उसको जब बातचीत होती है, लंबी बातचीत, अभी तो छोटा फॉर्मेट है, तो जब हम सुख की बात करते हैं तो सुख केवल आर्थिक या शारीरिक सुख बस नहीं है ना. सुख जब होता है तो सुख तो सभी तरह की चीजों को इनकम्पास करता है. जहां पे उसकी शारीरिक सुख की बात होती है तो जितनी भी हमारी जो सुविधाएं हैं, जो भी हम फैसिलिटीज हमको मिल रही हैं कि भाई वॉशिंग मशीन हो गया, मिक्सर हो गया, ये हो गया, दिस गिव यू शारीरिक सुख. लेकिन शारीरिक सुख के अलावा आत्मिक सुख भी है, मानसिक सुख भी है, ये सारे भी तो सुख ही है, आर्थिक सुख है. तो ये जब हम एक्स्ट्रापोलेट करते हैं, उस चीज को आगे लेके जाते हैं, बातचीत होती है, देन पीपल अंडरस्टैंड दिस. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये चीज समझते नहीं है, समय लगता है समझने में. जैसे लाइवलीहुड वाले मुद्दे पे आते आते जो शुरुआत के लोगों से, मतलब हमारे ग्रुप में तो काफी सीनियर लोग हैं, जब वो लाइवलीहुड में के काम करने के लिए भी जब शुरू में गए थे 20 साल 25 साल पहले, तब कितनी दिक्कतें आती थी. धीरे धीरे वो सारी टूरिज्म के ऊपर में जो शुरू में काम करना हुआ था, उसमें कितनी दिक्कतें आई थी. तो नाउ अब क्या करना चाहिए, इस पे हमको थोड़ा सा देखना होगा, और क्या नहीं करना चाहिए उस सेंस में कि जो हम लोग गड़बड़ कर चुके हैं उसमें क्या नहीं करना चाहिए.
I mean, just want to add, we are also facing a lot of challenges like this. I mean, of course, I don't want to romanticize. I should also accept that there is a class issue in tourism. I mean, when it comes to Kerala, definitely. But when it comes to Karnataka, we are working there now. Sometimes it is a caste issue also. It is there, and like Malika ji said, that safety net is very important. But I have a very different experience from Wayanad, our own village, where villagers themselves created a kind of a committee, and this committee is managing the tourism there basically. So what they decided, a certain percentage of income from tourism should go to a common fund, and that should be utilized for the common purposes of the villages. So what they decided, they really acknowledge the fact that tourism is not benefiting everybody. When it comes to indigenous community, Adivasis for the village, they have no role in tourism at all. So how to bring their participation was the biggest question for us as a committee and all. So I'm also from the same village. So we were discussing this and all. Then we decided that why don't we try to do something in the school, because that's where all these people come there. So it's a long-term strategy. So some of these actions, I think, it's a long-term actions, and some of them definitely we can bring. So the safety net is very important, and also the awareness among villagers. I mean, they understand this issue, at least in these communities. That's what I felt. And also I had some interaction with a couple of people from Malikaji's place also, but they're well aware of all these issues and trying to understand and, trying to address these issues.
हरीश जी, आपने, कैन आई जस्ट कम इन मीरा? हरीश जी, जो आपने कहा ना कि हम कर क्या सकते हैं, मुझे लगता है कि इसको हम एक शुगर कोटेड पिल जैसे हम लोग टूरिज्म को बहुत ही बेनाइन नजर से देखते हैं, एक लाइवलीहुड ऑप्शन की तरफ से की नजर से देखते हैं। मैं तो मानती हूँ कि हम इंडस्ट्री का हिस्सा हैं, पर यही है कि हम सबसे निचले तबके पर जब हैं तो हम लोग एक दूसरे से compete करने लग जाते हैं, हम कोलैबोरेट नहीं करते हैं, मार्केट हमें मतलब जस्ट प्लेज विद अस। और इससे कर क्या सकते हैं? मुझे लगता है संघर्ष के अलावा कोई चारा नहीं है। क्या हम जीतेंगे? प्रोबेबली नॉट। द इंडस्ट्री हमें गटक जाएगी। हमें अभी 20 साल हो गए हैं और हम लोग अभी भी अपना काम चला रहे हैं। हम एक दूसरे को कहते नहीं, हम लोग तो लंबे रेस के घोड़े हैं। You know, after homestays have come and ravaged, the tourism industry has ravaged all the homestays here. Hopefully we'll still be there for travelers. तो हरीश जी, आपकी जो बातें हैं, जो आपने कहा, बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ कि असलियत में जब पूरा प्रवाह अभी कैपिटलिज्म का जो है प्राइवेट एंटरप्राइज, प्राइवेट प्रॉफिट की ओर है, टू एक्सपेक्ट कम्युनिटीज एट द बॉटम रंग टू से नहीं हम तो सिर्फ साथ ही काम करेंगे, बड़ा मुश्किल है। सो उसमें तो हमें संघर्ष करते रहना पड़ेगा। टूरिज्म को बड़े पैनी नजर से देखना पड़ेगा। हम सोचें कि उससे ना क्राफ्ट क्लस्टर्स को काम मिल जाएगा। मोस्ट ऑफन I mean we've heard of palace tourism, doing little work with craft clusters, थोड़ा सा पैसा वहां चला जाए, चलो थोड़ा सा तो गया। We have to begin to challenge all those ways of working within ourselves. What Sumesh said, what is the share in the business that they get? Do they just get a token amount, or do they own that space of craft? Do the people who come there feel that they're going to an expert's place, somebody who's a craftsperson? So that equation also has to be changed. The perception has to be changed. और हरीश जी, मैं तो सहमत हूँ, संघर्ष के अलावा तो कोई और चारा ही नहीं है।
You like to use this forum to continue more conversations? Maybe you can invite people from government or other bodies to discuss this, maybe to to talk about it, make a bigger noise. Would you like to consider that? Then we can maybe think about that.
I think it's this forum is very interesting, Miraji, because I mean, of course, art and craft, it's very interesting. And I mean, I've been watching these discussions in some of the tourism forums. I think some of these forums, Malika ji also there. So what is happening there is slightly different. So like people like us, we are deciding what should be there and all. So what is the role of this craft people and I mean in terms of culture and all, in taking decisions on behalf of them, like I mean like this design. So what is there? Like a lot of craft villages are there. It's all museum piece, and I don't know what they are getting. I mean, that's something is really interesting to take up further. Like, what is their real benefits from this? Like beneficiaries or whatever. So I think it's interesting to discuss those subjects, and then probably we could also I mean, of course, all of us can share our practice, and then I think it's interesting. I'm really interested. I mean, of course.
What I would say is that जो लोग craft clusters के द्वारा या अभी groups के द्वारा, whether it's with other NGOs or other tour operators, sorry, I'll just put my phone on. उनके साथ अगर बातचीत करनी हो, because धरातल पर जो challenges होते हैं बहुत real होते हैं. Or like Sumesh said, and like Ashish ji here and many other people, we're all people who are actually working on the ground. So yes, if there are people who are venturing into the space of tourism and have real questions to ask, or have ventured and done some interesting things that they'd like to share, like for me, listening to Harishji was, very affirming, because these are all the questions and doubts one always had. What happens to traditional livelihoods? What happens when tourism has come and gone? फिर बचता क्या है उस इलाके का? Because there are places that are, over tourism does kill places and the whole enterprise. So इन चीजों से हम कैसे बचे तो नहीं, पर कैसे, how do we navigate through these spaces? Yes, I'd be interested in joining such a conversation.
Yeah, any other questions? Sorry, this conversation we asked if you, anybody else would like any question? I know we are, the time is up, the allotted time is up, but anyone else?
Would you like to share your experience? Because I know you also host people home. You host solo female travelers home, right?
Bhakti, are you asking me this question?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, because I have a bad connection. Hi. Yeah, I mean, mine is just what I'm, you know, I've been listening to the conversations, and I think I've actually visited Malika many years back. She is she is the person, you know, who inspired me the most to move to the hills and to work with the community. And you know, like, the fact that I'm hosting currently, like recently started hosting women travelers is beside the point. But you know what I'm seeing is, and it's extremely terrifying for us to see that what COVID has done is, like, मुझे लगता है सबसे ज़्यादा नुकसान पहाड़ों को पहुंचाया है. This whole work from the mountains things, to be honest, every house is being, you know, everybody is just breaking their old katkuni houses and building ugly concrete structures. They're building one room sets, and you know, just because I'm charging crazy amount of rent. I mean, कोई balance नहीं है, and कोई moderation नहीं, कोई control करने वाला नहीं है. Everybody is just going on doing that. So, and I'm based out of Nagar, and I've seen Nagar change drastically in the last 1.5 to 2 years. So it's very scary and disappointing. So something similar is happening to Lahore, which was really preserved ever since the Atal Tunnel inaugurated in 2020. People, I mean, within 1 week, 10 days, we started getting, information through the local news that, tourists were just going and, stealing potatoes from the fields, and there was women experienced eve teasing. Tourists were going and throwing bottles in the khet, in the orchard, jo hai wahan pe khet unke. So, I mean, it's extremely, disappointing to see कि मतलब we talking about कि लोगों के अंदर भी जो मतलब ये अभी सारा डिस्कशन हो रहा था कि जिससे वो जो एस्पिरेशन जो लोकल्स के अंदर ये एस्पिरेशन या ग्रीड भी जो आ रहा है वो क्या हमारी वजह से आ रहा है, बिकॉज वट एवर दे डिमांडिंग टूरिस्ट इज विलिंग टू पे, तो आई डोंट नो, आई मीन आई कीप हैविंग दिस कॉन्वर्सेशंस इन माय हेड. तो कि ये मतलब क्या हम that they are breaking down their traditional houses and building these concrete ugly structures. Everybody, what I think Malika also mentioned and others, ki also I think it's a lot to do with the exposure जो internet के through हो रहा है. Everybody has mobile phones, and तो चीजें बदलती जा रही हैं सब कुछ, तो उसको preserve कैसे करें? And as far as like, yeah, me hosting, travelers is, like I try and follow whatever responsible, sustainable ways in which we can. I mean, that's something very small that I do on the side. So that's something very different. But yeah, seeing the change that's happened in Nagar and around in the valley, including in Lahore, has been very disappointing.
I'm just curious, is there a body of, tourism which kind of has some level of, some kind of labeling that whether this is a sustainable stay or something like that? I mean, is something like that active? Does it make even sense to have something like that? I'm sure you're all part of some, sustainable tourism forums.
Can I? Yeah, no, there are like, I mean, of course, there are a lot of external certifications, I mean, like green certification and green leaf and all, but the certification business anyway. But I think Kerala, the Department of Tourism is trying like some classification of homestays and all. That is also not very useful in terms of controlling or regulating all these issues. But I think now Department of Tourism and India Department of Tourism DOT is talking about some sort of destination certification with this global sustainable tourism criteria. No, it is a UNWTO kind of a body and all. So they're talking about it. But as far as my knowledge, there is no certification body and all. But of course, Malika ji can, because she's a sarpanch basically. But what we are all kind of arguing that there should be some kind of a mechanism at the Gram Panchayat level. And of course, they have the powers. Like Constitution is definitely giving them the powers. So they can use it. And I'm sure they're also trying to, attempts. We are also trying something similar in Kerala, but it's a very big, a kind of a long battle sometime. But yeah, some of the areas we are successful, but some of the areas still it's very big struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, Meera, just 2 words to छोटी सी add करना चाहती हूँ to what Sumesh said. So there are, like he said, there are lots of places where there's certification, recognition to people who are doing responsible tourism. But I feel eventually, because it's an industry and because it is based off resources, and the resources are located where people live, it has to be local communities through their, their constitutional right. So I don't see any other way the pushback is going to happen. Right. And in Europe, in other countries, it is people who are rising up and saying enough, because they're paying the cost for, an industry that is very, very indiscriminate. So मुझे लगता है लोगों के आवाज के बिना कुछ नहीं बनेगा, कुछ नहीं बदलेगा.
Okay, I think if there are no more questions, we can wind up the session. We've already taken a little extra time, and yeah, thank you so much, all of you, for giving your time to us, for sharing your experience, your thoughts, your learnings through all these years. We'll keep these conversations going. I think there's a part 2 of this happening next month. And during that time, let us also maybe share some ideas about, how we can continue to share experiences, learn from each other, and how we would like to use this space to maybe continue this conversation. So we can think together on this.
Thank you, everyone. Great session.
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, Harish.
Yeah. So can we invite such ऐसे और भी लोग होंगे जो इस तरह की चीजों के ऊपर हमेशा चिंता करता होंगे जो है, तो उनको भी हम जोड़े एंड हम उनसे भी फाइंड आउट करें कि ऐसे कोई फोरम्स है, ऐसे कोई जहाँ पे वो लोग इस तरह से कलेक्टिवली आए हो या उसकी तरह से कुछ नया किया हो. तो ये सब चीज़ें शायद और एरियाज पे भी इसको कैसे कर सकते हैं, उसमें हेल्पफुल हो सकती है. तो एक ऐसा कन्वर्सेशन अगर चलता रहे तो कुछ ना कुछ इसमें से हमें हेल्प मिलती है.
Harish, I think मुझे लगता है Malika ji, Ashish ji, Sumesh, they're all part of such forums for responsible tourism. So we can share their numbers. I'm sure that Kamir has Malika's contacts in any case. Yes. I'll share it with you. I'll share you Ashish ji and Malika ji and Sumesh. तीनों का share. So you can get in touch with them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye, Bhakti.